What is up, guys? Welcome back to CageChat MMA. We're here for, of course, the UFC Vegas 20 preview. It is Jairzinho Rozenstruik versus Ciryl Gane. Of course, this, we continued as a heavyweight, almost unofficial Grand Prix that we started off with the month with Overeem and Volkov. Volkov then progressed. We saw last week Derek Lewis viciously knock out Curtis Bates, and now we've got another heavyweight battle on tonight. But make sure to hit that subscribe button. Make sure to hit follow if you're watching on Twitch or on Facebook. And now let's get into it. Of course, Jairzinho Rozenstruik coming in off the back of a very impressive win against Junior Dos Santos in his last fight. Right hook to the ground and a phenomenal finish, bouncing back very well after that loss to Francis Ngannou, which was almost a step pushed too far for Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Now, I know we pushed to that fight and he called out Ngannou. And at the time, if you called out Ngannou, who hadn't been active that much, he was very much number one at that point, albeit we had to get through the DC and Stipe trilogy. We all knew deep down that Francis Ngannou was the number one contender and deserved that title shot at that point. So we called him out, hopeful, but he missed by, 2-3 inches, didn't he? He missed that call by 2 or 3 inches, and then he got knocked out UFC 249, the very first card back after the break because of the pandemic that we had. But he's been storming through the competition prior to that, hasn't he? Obviously, finishes against Alistair Overeem, re-snapped victory from the Georgia defeat, put him on his backside with 4 seconds left of that very last round, and I think many people, had those 4 seconds played out, giving it a 50-45, maybe even worse, or more, should we say, to Alistair Overeem. He comfortably won that fight up until the point we found out or saw him get knocked out. He then, knocked out Andre Arlovski. We see how tough he's been recently, albeit coming off that loss to Tom Aspinall now last weekend, of course. And we can't forget that knockout against Alan Crowder in just 9 seconds. And it's interesting, Rozenstruik has got the second fastest win, I think, in UFC heavyweight history, or at least UFC history, in a non-title bout, and he's also got the latest win in UFC heavyweight history. So it's incredible what he's done, and he shows that he can do it, from the first bell to the last bell. And we could be expecting something similar to that tonight. Obviously, it's Ciryl Gane's first 5-round fight scheduled and competed when, including his time outside the UFC. Obviously, he's only 7-0, still undefeated, so he's not been in the game that long to experience a 5-round fight. So it's going to be interesting to see how he does under the spotlight. It is, of course, in that UFC Apex in the smaller ring compared to Fight Island, which is the 30-foot octagon, I believe they call it, isn't it? So it's an interesting one, and obviously where this division is at the moment, it is a bit revitalized, especially after the past month. It's looking a lot better. We had some unanswered questions, but we still got some questions to answer. Obviously, the big one being tonight, and then we got to find out who will be the heavyweight champion next month between Stipe Miocic and Francis Ngannou. We then got to put John Jones in that sort of period and that sort of equation to see where he comes out. Obviously, many think he's going to be looking at a debut for the heavyweight division, at least in June, July, August, going into the summer. Now, there's also talk, I don't know how true that is, of him waiting to see what happens between Jan Blachowicz and Adesanya next week. Of course, because obviously if Adesanya wins, then that books up potentially a fight between Adesanya and John Jones. But I don't know, after all the work that we see John Jones putting in, going up to 240, for him to then come back down to 205 and postpone that weight to heavyweight for a little bit longer. But we've seen stranger things happen. We could very much see him fight for the heavyweight title in June, July, and then cut back down to 205, whether he's successful or unsuccessful with the heavyweight title challenge, to then take on Adesanya or Blachowicz. Now, I think that happens more if Adesanya obviously wins that title, because obviously those two have been back and forth so many times in the past 12, 18 months. It's an interesting fight. It's a fight that does incredible numbers. They want to put it in the Raiders Stadium in LA, or in Vegas, sorry, should we say. And I think it all plays on what happens next weekend and what happens next month as a whole, to see what happens in the heavyweight division. Obviously, DC brought out the mention that, Stipe loses to Ngannou, he's going to want a rematch. It'd be 1-on-1 for the trilogy. I think that would be, you'd have to give him that the greatest heavyweight of all time. If he beats Francis and then loses to Jones, you'd have to imagine he deserves a rematch against John Jones, depending on how that defeat goes about. He could retire at that point. So we are in a sticky patch, but we have got a fight tonight. We've got obviously Ciryl Gane testing Rozenstruik. If Gane wins, that's going to put him in very good stead for the rest of the year. Obviously 8-0. It'll be interesting to see how they deal with him, because he's only what? He's had 4 fights in the UFC. Tonight will be his 5th. So to be, Brock Lesnar had 4 fights and then a title fight, so he's in that sort of ballpark. If he wins tonight, he's only 2, maybe 2 fights maximum from a title shot. Maybe 3, depending on time management issues and where we see the title maybe change hands a couple of times. There might be 2 or 3, and that's not his thought. The likes of Derek Lewis has to get a shot first, perhaps. So it all depends on how this division plays out. But if he wins tonight, and Rozenstruik equally, if he wins tonight, they're only a fight away from heavyweight challenging the heavyweight title, or for the heavyweight title. But yes, obviously we'll have a quick look at the. Actually, let's have a look at the division first. I was going to say, let's have a look at the tape for the fight. But as I mentioned, Stipe Miocic versus Francis Ngannou at UFC 260 next weekend or next month. At the end of the month, and the second pay-per-view of the month, we're actually spoiled next month for UFC and MMA as a whole. Obviously, Derek Lewis beat Curtis Blades. I've not changed it. This is the old one. Give me 1 second. So yes, as we see now, Derek Lewis moved up to second in the division. Obviously, after beating Curtis Blades, got Rozenstruik tonight up against Ciryl Gane. Now, for me, I think Volkov is the person missing out at the moment, because obviously he had a phenomenal decision against Overeem. Derek Lewis did call out Alistair Overeem. So for me, I think you have to build that fight, make that fight. I think it makes sense. He called him out. He deserves to get that opportunity. It gives Overeem an opportunity to get back in the win column and fight someone above him. And of course, it makes sense business-wise and on a time management issue for the UFC to let the rest of the division play out. Derek Lewis would go into that fight probably heavily favourite, but again, Overeem could very much get the win in that fight. It depends on which Overeem shows up. If it's the Overeem that showed up against Curtis Blades, Alexander Volkov, then he wouldn't. He's got no chance of getting that win. But if it's the Overeem that showed up against, Rozenstruik, for example, we could very much get a decision win on that night. He's so much vastly more experienced, but I'd imagine Derek Lewis, he would hit too hard. We've seen Overeem, transform from a striker to adding a very good level of grappling to his game, but we see how much Derek Lewis is able to get out of that ground game and get back to his feet. So that'd be an interesting fight for me, but I think whoever wins tonight would get Alexander Volkov, in my opinion, especially if it's Ciryl Gane, because obviously he's 7th in the rankings. But Rozenstruik, again, he wins tonight, he probably jumps up above Curtis Blades for sure, but jumps up above Derek Lewis. I'm not sure. It'd have to depend on how impressive that victory would be tonight. But for me, I think Volkov gets the winner of tonight, and we see probably Derek Lewis, Overeem. Hopefully, if they made that fight probably in August or July, and you maybe make Volkov and Rozenstruik or Volkov or Gane on the same card, perhaps, or if we're allowed to in the August to October range, if we could start filling up stadiums across Europe, maybe put it in Paris, maybe put it in Russia. We have the UFC Russia probably, and we don't know. Especially when Gane wins the heavyweight title, how impressive would it be to see him make that first defense of the title in, say September, October time in Paris. We put Ciryl Gane on that card, Alexander Volkov, Tom Aspinall to pack it up with European talent. And some of the most elite strikers and fighters in that heavyweight division on that card too. It would be cracking, wouldn't it? Maybe put Edwards in there. You could say Samir Thadin. You could very much put on there, and a couple of the French guys from Cage Warriors. Names just evaded me at the moment, so I do apologise for that one. But yes, the division is absolutely stacked again, and it was a bit stale a year ago. But I think we're coming up to this passing of the guard moment where we see the elder statesmen, those 36, 38, 40 plus sort of fighters are coming back down to the division or retiring as DC did. And we've got the new kids almost coming up and overtaking and refreshing this division that we can probably see. And we're going to see Curtis Blades, Aspinall, Francis, Rozenstruik, Volkov, Gane probably within the next 5 or 6 years, some of them at least anyway, especially, the likes of Aspinall is still only 27, 28. But it's going to be an incredible one. Now, whether this one goes 5 rounds, I'm not sure. Let's have a look at the tape, of course. 11-1 versus 7-0, so 18 wins in total, but we know Rozenstruik He's got that significant background in kickboxing, of course, and he's done so well, with that as well. I think he had 64, 66 knockouts in kickboxing over a 74-win period, I believe, or something like that. I saw from ESPN. I can't remember it off the top of my head. Both of them very close in weight. Throwing to each other like Seth Rozenstruik, that could come in very, very handy for him. Come fight night, come later on in the night to get the knockout against Ciryl Gane, because obviously Gane's have to reach a little bit more further. We could see something very similar to how we saw in Ngannou and Rozenstruik, maybe Rozenstruik on the opposite side of that. Rather than being the one getting knocked out, he gets the knockout, just timing his punch at the perfect time. But Ciryl Gane obviously undefeated. Now there was some height dispute with Rozenstruik. He said he's 6'2" yesterday in a post on ESPN, but UFC does have him down at 6'4". We should probably get that checked out, and obviously it's not a big issue, but for graphics and whatnot, it'd be interesting to see. Obviously I probably should have gone with the fighter who probably knows how tall he is, rather than the UFC sort of statement and what the UFC has said his height is at 6'4". But either way, two absolute heavyweight giants. And it could be a war for 5 rounds. I don't see it going to 5 rounds. I think it goes 3 maximum. I think these both do hit hard, especially if calf kicks coming and leg kicks coming to play. I can see, possibly a body kick finish, maybe. I haven't seen too much off the ground from these two, so I'm expecting it to stay on the feet. Very much a boxing or kickboxing bout, you'd imagine. Be interested to see who takes the centre of that octagon, whether it will be Ciryl Gane with Rozenstruik almost praying around the outside of the octagon, looking to maybe come in with another hand right or something like that. It's a mouth-watering contest, and it's almost as hard to predict as last week's was. But again, we saw how that went, and Derek Lewis got the knockout finish in the second round. Superb. It could be a replica of the last weekend's fight. Really, we might see Ciryl Gane have a very good first round, and then Rozenstruik adjust his game and get a knockout in a second. But for predictions, it's hard to look at the undefeated guy, the guy that's had so much sort of hype and deservedly so. So many people have been high on Ciryl Gane and saying he's the future of the division, and he certainly could be. 7-0. How old is he? He's 30 years old, so he's not even in his prime yet. He's still coming up into his prime, and a win tonight would be a phenomenal win on his record, especially a knockout win as well. Let's say, we have to back Ciryl Gane. Let's say he gets it done, I think, and we see what happens with Rozenstruik. But again, this one could go either way. Let us know your predictions down in the comments below, and let's move on to the co-main event, which again, we've had an embarrassment of riches. Actually, before we go into the co-main event, let's just have a look at the counter fights that we've seen on tonight. Obviously, Dominic Reyes and Yuri Prochaska are supposed to be the main event of this card. I think Rozenstruik and Gane was meant to fight on 258. Wasn't they a 3-round fight, or maybe later down the line, and they had their dates changed. Once Reyes and Prochaska was unable to fight because of COVID protocols, Alonzo Menifield and William Knight they'd fall apart during the week as well. Today, of course, Angela Hill and Ashley Yoder fell apart with Ashley Yoder, or one of Yoder's cornermen testing positive for COVID. Hayoni Barcelos has lost 2 fights on this card. Emily Whitmere lost 2 fights on this card. Randy Brown versus Alex Oliveira lost on this card. Asante Chow potentially fighting on this card, lost. So we have lost an incredible amount of fights, but we've still got this fantastic 9-fight card. We've got Nikita Krylov versus Magomed Ankalaev, which is going to be a phenomenal fight. This could be fight of the night. I do think the one we'll be talking about a little bit later will be fight of the night. But again, 5-fight win streak even there for Magomed Ankalaev. Obviously, there's 2 wins against Ankalaev. We had to wait a long time to see that happen. Eventually, it did happen, and he came out the victor at UFC 254, and deservedly so. Not that I dislike Ankalaev, but I think the first win, shall we call it, with Magomed Ankalaev, that the whole wobble thing, I felt sorry for the referee. I think it was Keith Peterson who called that fight, and a lot of people went at him for calling it early because obviously Ankalaev was playing possum and whatnot. And I do put the blame a little bit on Ankalaev, but stay professional in there. Obviously, if you give the referee a decision to make, he's going to have to make it. And we're in this business where we're protecting the fighters. If he was actually hurt and we let him go on for too long, we'd be calling out Keith Peterson for not pulling that fight sooner. So I feel he did get a little bit hard done by. But we got a rematch after 3 cancellations because of COVID and whatnot. And we saw it, and obviously Ankalaev got a finish. No, and there was no qualms or upset about how that method came about as a brutal knockout in the first round. And for me, that puts him in good stead up against Nikita Krylov. Is 27-7. Obviously, Magomed Ankalaev is 14-1. So it is a bit of an experience disparity here. Krylov coming off the back of the win against Johnny Walker, a decision winner back in March. Of course, he's 2-2 in his last, rather than being other instance. Same Peru, OSP, of course. He did lose to Jan Blachowicz, the champion, of course, now, and Glover Teixeira, who, in many people's eyes, should be fighting for the belt next week if it wasn't for Israel Adesanya moving up, of course. But for Ankalaev, he's got 2 wins over Kutalaba, Dalchalung Giambula, and Klidsen and Martin Prekning out, of course. His last loss was against Paul Craig via triangle, that famous, of course, arm triangle in the last second of the 3rd round where Paul Craig pulled out that brilliant victory. But, Ankalaev is one not to be messed with. He's a dark horse of this division. I should have done light heavyweight division graphics, of course, but let's have to look at the tape. Of course, we have got 6-3 versus 6-3, of course, with them both the same height. As we mentioned, 27-7 up against 13-1. Both of them in that light heavyweight division. And we've got a 2.5 inch reach advantage there for Krylov, whilst a 0.5 inch in leg reach advantage for Ankalaev. Now, I do think Ankalaev is going to get the winner. I think he's maybe a dark horse of this division, perhaps. You've got the elite of the division that raises the Prochazkas, Alexander Rakic, Thiago Santos, who's going to be fighting very soon for the title, I believe. We get to see that rematch against Jan Blachowicz, or maybe Adesanya's champion at that point. Who knows? We will find out next week, don't we, on that incredible card. But these two, got Ankalaev in 11th and Nikita Krylov down in 8th in this division, so it would be a fantastic win for Ankalaev to start of 2021. He's probably going to be looking, maybe not for a title shot, but at the end of the year, although we've seen, if he fights 2 or 3 times against opponents higher than him, we could very much see him get them a title shot. But I think his aim for this year should be getting to that top 5, that top 4 of this division, and a win tonight would be the perfect way to set that off, of course. And he does hit very hard. I'm good to Lava found out the bad way. Nikita Krylov, again, is a good technical fighter, and one that we probably shouldn't be overlooking too much going into tonight's one. But I do think, I do see Ankalaev coming out the victor here tonight, and it's going to be an incredible coming event. Whether it goes to 3 rounds, it probably won't. I'm going to say 2 rounds to this one, but again, I think one of these two walk away with $50,000 in their bonus, whether that's a fight of the night bonus or it is a performance of the night bonus for one of them separately. But yeah, this one could easily be on a pay-per-view card as a co-main event, or a main card sort of fight. These two, they hit so hard. Looking at saying that we've got just going back through Nikita Krylov, he had 3 finishes in a row in terms of knockouts. He's got two submission wins in the last 10 fights at least. He's got a couple of decisions. His last 2 did go to the decision, and that probably shows maybe the level of opponent in terms of Johnny Walker and Glover Teixeira that he was facing. And Ankalaev, of course, 2 finishes, albeit one of them has a question mark over them. 3, got that front kick finish. So he's on a 3 fight, 3 finish streak through his wins, of course. And I think he does get the same tonight. To be honest, I think he gets another finish. So make sure to hit that like button. In fact, hit that like button if you think Ankalaev wins. Hit that dislike button if you think Nikita Krylov wins. And do the same for the main event as well. If you think Rozenstruik's going to win, hit that like button. And if you think Rozenstruik's going to lose, hit that dislike button. And we'll see Ciryl Gane go up to 8-0. And moves on to Montana De La Rosa versus Mayra Bueno Silva. Of course, this is in the flyweight division. We've seen a lot from Montana De La Rosa. She's someone who, comes up, wins 2, and then loses 3 on a bounce. She had a 3-fight win streak, beating Christina Marks, Rachel Ostovich, and Nadia Kasim. Then lost to Andrea Lee, beat Mara Barella, and then lost to Vivian Araujo, of course, in September of last year. She did have a fight against Tyler Santos, cancelled. She had Marina Morris cancelled before that Araujo fight as well. She didn't have a good end to the 2020. She had a good start, picking up a good win, but unfortunately did tail off. Now, she's got losses to some of the elite, in that short division in terms of Mackenzie Dern, and obviously Cynthia Callier, who was previously strawweight and now moved up to flyweight, and now in that top 5, top 6 bracket now. So she's only got, what we say, good losses on her record. It's not like she's lost to anyone that, you're looking there going, oh, she should be beating her on the night, really. And it'd be interesting to see how she goes up against Bruno Silva, who's 7-1. She's got a win of the Maribela in her own right via Ramba. She lost to Marina Morris, of course. She got wins over Jillian Robertson, Mariana Souza. So you may be expecting her. Obviously, she's come through the Dana White Contender Series from 2018, so she can be, very highly touted. And to have a look at their record or have a look at their teletape, 11-6 up against 7-1, 5-7, 5-6. You can see the reach advantage there for De La Rosa by 1.5 inches, and then 2 inches in the leg reach for Silva. Now Silva does have, looking here, she's got 3 submission victories in a row in her last 3 wins. How the last 4, of course, did lose that decision, but her last 3 wins at least, they're all finishes. You've got a ninja choke and 2 arm bars there. So if you're putting money on tonight's fight, you'd probably be, putting money on an arm bar victory, or at least a submission victory for both. I'm just looking at last time, the 3 wins that she had against Nadia Kassem, Rachel Stitch, and Christina Marks, Montana De La Rosa was all submission finishes as well. One on the Ultimate Fighter, 2 of them on the Ultimate Fighter, should I say. And obviously one in UFC 234 against Kassem, 2 arm bars and a rear naked choke. She also had a Darce choke and submission before that. Obviously, with a Nico Montana loss in the middle there. So both of these very good on the ground, very good at getting a submission victory. So if you see this, again, this could be one of those that go the distance, but if someone has a good start, you could probably say a first round armbar or a first round submission victory for either one of these 2. And it's going to be a good fight, I think. Obviously, neither of these are ranked, but they're both, I would say, top 20, top 25 in that flyweight division. Probably you'd imagine they always get to that top 15, and whoever's put in front of them, they end up losing to, unfortunately. But, for Silva, she gets a good win here tonight. She's beaten some of the good names in the sort of not veterans, but staple holders now. Jillian Robertson, Mara Barella, you would say are almost not veterans, but they're noticeable names where you look down the resume and you go, oh, she's beaten this name, this name, this name. Oh, let's see how she does up in a step up against competition. And the same would be said with the winner of the Montana De La Rosa, of course. Now, I do think, predictions-wise, I'm going to go with the De La Rosa's decision. I think it just does go 3 rounds. I'm not expecting the most entertaining fight of all time as the fight's walking to the cage of the first prelim. But I do think this is going to be a good scrap nonetheless. And we move on to what's going to be my my fight of the night, and the one I'm looking forward to most is Pedro Munhoz versus Jimmy Rivera 2. Of course, this one was meant to happen 2 weeks ago, or on the 13th, of course, but it got pushed back, I believe, due to COVID reasons. Obviously, Pedro Munhoz coming off the back of the loss to, or back-to-back losses to Jermaine Sterling and Frankie Edgar, haven't beaten, that beautiful knockout against Cody Garbrandt, who seemed to go back in the win column now, and back to being, and maybe the Cody Garbrandt we know and expect to see. Obviously, Brian Caraway, Brett Johns wins before that, lost to John Dodson, but he's beaten the who's who in that bantamweight division, having lost to Aljamain Sterling fights at the time next week, and obviously Frankie Edgar, who had that very vicious loss to Sandhagen a couple of weeks ago. So obviously this is a rematch. Of course, these 2 fought back in 2015, so 6 years. A lot of fights of both of them having 8-9 fights since they last fought. Rivera's beaten Thomas Almeida, Uriah Faber. Since then, John Dodson, who's beat Thomas Almeida. Cody Starman, he's coming back with a good win against him back in July. Of course, he wasn't in a couple of losses, obviously, to the bantamweight champion Petty Gann and the challenger Aljamain Sterling, and a former challenger Marlon Moraes, of course. So he's lost again. Those are losses that you look at and you go, okay, maybe it just wasn't your night, or these guys are, they are the future of the division. and just a little bit better. But again, that bantamweight division is absolutely stacked with talent, and looking at it, we've obviously got Petty and Aljamain Sterling, so we could see a new champion next weekend. Cody Sandhagen's in the driving seat for the next challenge at least. You got Rob Font, Cody Garbrandt in third and fourth, Jose Aldo, Marlon Moraes on a bit of a slippery slope at the moment. Frank Edge is coming off that loss, of course. Then you've got Pedro Munhoz and Jimmy Adera right behind them. And then behind those two is Javier Sancho and Dominic Cruz. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens here. You've got Merab, of course, who's phenomenal down all the way in 12th, Cody Starman in 13th, Song Yadong and Marlon Vera. And I do think it is the most stacked division in terms of, I think the skill gap between champion and 15 is a little bit slimmer. Then you can say, obviously, the big names are in lightweight. You've got Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje, Charles Oliveira. Those are the big names in the end of the division. And you can say that is probably the most stacked one. But I think once you get out of that top 5, top 6, there could be somewhat of a bit of a slope down. Whereas I don't think we see that until we get to maybe 10, 11. Obviously, Dominic Cruz is down at 11 and he thought for a title just under a year, well, coming up to a year ago now against Henry Cejudo. Obviously, that didn't go to plan and maybe reflect the 11th bantamweight sort of position. But again, stacked division, and this is going to be my fight tonight. I think these two absolutely bring it. I do think it goes to 3 rounds. And to have a look at the tail of the tape before we do head off, 18-5 versus 23-4, 5-6 versus 5-4. So both of these steeped in experience now. We'll start 23 fights for MUNHOZ and 27 fights there for Rivera. So both of them pretty close. 3.5 reach advantage there for Rivera, and half-inch leg reach advantage as well for him as well. So again, this has been an incredible fight. I think these two bring it. The bantamweights always bring it. The fact that we almost lost the flyweight division, we see a lot more technical, a lot more closer fights from these smaller guys in these 125 pound division. 155 is probably when the power probably comes into play a little bit more when you're looking at Conor McGregor, etc. And then obviously as they go up, they can take less hits, and it's probably more flash knockout, especially as you get up to heavyweight. But it's always a joy to watch these guys and women fight down into the smaller weight divisions and put on an absolute show for us. I think these two will do. Obviously, Jeremy there, it was a split decision as well, so it was a close fight, and I do expect another one tonight as well. Especially, and it'll be interesting to see how they've developed their game over the 6 years, but since they fought each other, or 5 years and 2 or 3 months, with a November date back in 2015. So yes, I'm going to leave it there, guys, because I can see the fight starting in the background. Make sure to hit that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. Make sure to hit follow if you're watching on Facebook or Twitch. And I will see you guys on Monday for a review.